Well, good afternoon. It is a true joy to be with you today. And my premise this afternoon is kind of a simple one for this talk. It's that there are people, experiences, and events in our lives that are so significant that they literally change who we are as people. This isn't rocket science. It's not that complicated of an idea. We all know at some level that we're the product of the experiences of our lives. And yet, I think it has the ability to be really powerful for those of us in student affairs. Imagine if people can change, even in adulthood, because of their interactions with other people, because of events and occurrences in their life. We in student affairs have almost unlimited potential to impact the students that we serve. And so what I'd like to do today, I'd like to give you some examples from my own life, core principles of mine, personality traits that I have, and I want to tie those back to specific people, experiences, and events in my life, all true stories, to give you some sense of how I think this works. All right, let's get started. Example number one. I can be a difficult person to get to know. Even my good friends are going to tell you it takes a lot of work to get beyond this sometimes cold exterior to know the real John. I know where this comes from. I'm the youngest of 5 kids in a traditional Catholic family in the small conservative town of Bakersfield, California. How many of you have been to Bakersfield, California? I am so sorry. I am. So I was 9 years old. In the 4th grade at Our Lady of Perpetual Help school. And one day, an older woman, Tallulah, from the 5th grade, she and I went behind the nun's house and we kissed. We kissed for like 10 minutes. This was my first kiss. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty that day. This is true. There was no question in my mind. I knew for sure I liked boys. Yeah, I did. So there I am at the age of 9 in a traditional Catholic family in a small conservative town, realizing that I am something that up until that point in my life I had only heard referred to as queer or fag. So I started to build walls around myself. I started to put masks up in front of myself because I was terrified of what people would say or do if they learned my secret. I was 9 years old in a conservative town. We know exactly, in the 1970s, we know exactly what people would say or do. It's taken me most of my adult life to take down those walls that I started building when I was 9 years old, but we'll come back to that. Example number 2, I'm a really hard worker. I have a great work ethic. I expect other people to work hard as well, and I didn't always have that, but I know where it comes from. Because perhaps like many of you, in my early 20s, I ran away and joined the circus. The Royal Liechtenstein Quarter Ring Sidewalk Circus. I juggled, I did stilt walking. I juggled while stilt walking. I did these Houdini escapes. My favorite was I was hanging by my ankles 20 feet in the air and escaping from a straitjacket in front of the crowd. I loved it. It was so much fun, but it was so much work. I never worked so hard in my life. Every day we'd drive to a new town. We'd set up the show, we'd perform the show, we'd tear it down, and the next day we did it all over again. In that year I traveled with a circus, we performed probably 300 times. I learned the value of hard work, something that I didn't have before the circus, but I've had ever since. Example number 3, I love to laugh. My sense of humor is probably my favorite thing about myself. I try to laugh every day as much as I can. I know where this comes from too. Because although my father was hilarious, it was my brother Michael that taught me to laugh. Michael's the middle child of the 5, I'm the youngest. He would just be able to tell when I was having a bad day. He'd come up to me and he'd do an impression or he'd do this stupid little dance, and both of us would be rolling on the ground laughing. He helped me laugh my way through those horrible years of elementary and middle school. And as we grew older, we grew closer. But it wasn't until we were in our 20s that we both came out to each other as gay. 2 kids in a conservative town in a small traditional Catholic family. Imagine the Hail Marys that my mother sent up out of that house. We were not ready to be out publicly, but the fact that we had taken that big step, and it took so long because Mike, like me, built up his walls. When we finally spoke that truth to each other and laughed our way through the process of coming out to each other, it changed my life. A little bit later on, we had the ability to overlap again. We were both living and working in San Francisco, California. And God's city. And we laughed our way through almost all 3 years of that. Almost. Because in 1990, Michael was diagnosed as HIV positive. And in 1993, at the age of just 32, he died of AIDS. The person who taught me to laugh is the same person who taught me how to grieve. That last year of his life, I would not trade for anything. I got to see him almost every single day, and it was horrible watching him waste away from that disease. And yet, he helped me. He gave me an appreciation for the value of being with people in their most difficult times. He taught me how to grieve the loss of him. He's been gone about 25 years now, and if you've lost somebody close, you know you think of them all the time. When I think of Michael, I think of 2 things. That he taught me how to laugh, and that he taught me how to grieve the loss of love. Example number 4. Justice is important to me. Speaking truth to power is important to me. And it wasn't always the case, but I know where it comes from. For 8 years, I studied to be a Catholic priest. It seems crazy now, but I loved it. From the time I was a little kid, I wanted to be a Catholic priest. It was a lifelong dream of mine to be a Catholic priest. I would still be wearing one of these things in a church somewhere if it hadn't been for the fact that some of the priests that I lived and worked with were just a little too friendly. More than a dozen of them made sexual advances or attempted sexual assault on me. What are you going to do? I know what I did. I left the Jesuits, that was the order I was part of. I sued them and the Roman Catholic Church for sexual harassment, and we won. Thank you. It was the first court case of its kind in the country. Before that, believe it or not, churches and religious organizations could not be sued for sexual discrimination and harassment. So it was an important case. It's still cited by courts around the country, and when it was first decided, it got a lot of media attention. 60 Minutes, the television news magazine show, 60 Minutes decided they would do a story on my case. And at that time, 60 Minutes had 10 million viewers. I was so excited. I knew that 60 Minutes had 4 stories per week. That means that quite literally this was going to be my 15 minutes of fame. I was so excited. I told everybody. My mother told everybody. My friends told everybody. The problem was that 60 Minutes didn't tell me in advance that they were going to share something that I had kept from everybody in my professional life, from most people in my personal life, a secret that I had kept since I was 9 years old behind the nun's house at Our Lady of Perpetual Help School. 60 Minutes, when it aired, outed me as gay to 10 million people. Aside from the loss of my brother, it was the most devastating experience of my life because I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready. Professionally or personally, I wasn't ready. It felt like somebody was taking a baseball bat to those walls that I had so carefully constructed beginning when I was 9 years old. But then something happened. It was like a light switch being turned on. And this experience became this experience. Instead of feeling like somebody was taking a bat to my core, the image became me hanging by my ankles 20 feet in the air, having been in a straitjacket for my entire life, and finally being free. I learned that honesty is healing. That speaking truth to power, whether it's about misconduct in the Catholic Church or taking ownership for my own sexuality, honesty is healing. And telling the truth, even at significant personal cost, can, even in small ways, change the world. And isn't that what we're about in student affairs? The impact that we can have on the students we serve? I'm reminded of one final story. In the early 90s, I was teaching high school in the Bay Area, and we were at a retreat. We were sitting around in a circle at the beginning of it, and the retreat leader said, I would like you all to introduce yourself and say something that maybe nobody knows about you. I mean, there's like 10 things I could have picked at that point in my life. But I knew what I was going to say, and so he called on me first, and I said, my name is John. My brother is dying, and I'm having a really difficult time. After what seemed like a long time, the student got up and walked over to me and hugged me and shared with the group that his parents were separated and that it was starting to affect his schoolwork. My willingness to be vulnerable gave him permission to be vulnerable, gave the entire group permission to be vulnerable. When I know myself well, where I come from, who the most important people are in my life, what are my core values, what are the most important moments of my life, when I know myself well, I can share myself well, right? We can be vulnerable with people. We can be more authentic in the communities that we belong to. And when we do that, the possibilities for impacting our students are limitless. And we in student affairs know, I think probably better than most, that when we impact students, we together change the world. Thank you.